What if I told you the only real difference between gangsters and billionaires is the suit they wear? This is not a conspiracy. This is legalized crime, explained through the financial system you live in. Gangsters versus billionaires isn't history. It's an evolution of power, money, and control. What once required violence is now done with contracts, debt, and banking system manipulation. This is corporate crime exposed dance. Clean, legal, and protected by the system itself. The institutionalized crime system, where white-collar crime holds more power than guns. How elites control money through debt-based economic control and hidden systems. FIA versus corporations mushy. Same logic, different uniforms, bigger consequences. Wealth isn't chaos. It's precision, structure, and control. Is not broken. It's working exactly as designed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The only real difference between a ruthless gangster and a celebrated Wall Street billionaire is the suit. No mask, no gun, just a better tailor. And once you truly understand this, the way you see money, power, and the global system will never be the same again. Think about it for a second. When you watch Peaky Blinders, everything feels obvious. Thomas Shelby builds his empire with violence, intimidation, and absolute control over territory. We see the blades, the blood, the lawlessness, and we label it instantly: organized crime. But what if the exact same blueprint, the same mindset, the same strategies, the same hunger for dominance never disappeared? What if it simply evolved, cleaned itself up, and walked straight into the glass towers of Wall Street? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never stop to face. The methods that once ruled the streets now rule the markets. One gang protects its territory with razor blades. The other does it with contracts, legal teams, and language so complex it feels untouchable. The goal, however, is identical total control. This video pulls back the curtain on what I call the architecture of corruption, where organized crime didn't die. It graduated, put on a three-piece suit, and moved to Manhattan. You felt it, even if you couldn't explain it. That quiet anger when a small business is crushed by regulation, while a massive corporation commits a billion-dollar fraud and walks away with a fine that barely registers. That moment when you ask yourself, how do they keep getting away with this? Stay with me, because the answer is far more disturbing than you think. White-collar crime isn't a flaw in the system. In many cases, it is the system. We're about to dive into the dark evolution of money and power, how underworld tactics became official business strategy. Market manipulation, elimination of competition, debt-based protection. The parallels aren't symbolic, they're structural. The next time you pass a massive bank headquarters, ask yourself this: are you looking at a financial institution or a fortress? The idea of the boardroom gangster makes people uncomfortable because it destroys the illusion of a clean, fair market. It forces us to look past luxury watches and private jets and focus on something far more dangerous: how power is actually taken, locked in place, and defended. In this journey, you'll see that the most dangerous criminals don't hide in the shadows. They sit in well-lit rooms, wearing silk ties, protected by the very laws they helped write. And the deeper we go, the harder it becomes to tell where legitimate strategy ends and criminal conspiracy begins. By the end of this story, you may realize something unsettling: that the Shelbys weren't monsters ahead of their time. They were prototypes. But before we expose the scandals and the players who proved Wall Street learned everything from the streets, we have to start with the very first weapon of this empire. Because in high finance, the deadliest weapon isn't a gun. It's a contract. When you start looking at a legal contract through this lens, something unsettling happens. It stops being just a piece of paper and starts to look like a tactical move, a way to claim territory without firing a single shot. In Peaky Blinders, territory was taken with blood on the streets of Birmingham. In our world, that same territory, politely called market share, is taken through complexity, influence, and quiet pressure. And as we peel back the layers of this architecture of corruption, there's a moment most people feel it hit. Because this isn't just intellectual, it's emotional. It changes how you look at your career, your savings, and the future you're working toward. If this connection between the street and the boardroom is starting to click, if it feels uncomfortable, but also strangely clarifying, Pause with me for a second. Comment below right now. Have you ever felt like you were playing a game where the rules were hidden from you? That one question says more than 1,000 opinions. Because this isn't about venting, it's about recognizing a pattern most people are trained not to see. The truth is, we're not just watching a video here. We're doing something quieter and far more dangerous to entrenched power. We're paying attention. And attention is the one thing these systems can't survive without controlling. The people running these boardrooms will never explain this to you. They prefer shadows, jargon, and press releases that say nothing. But here, we're going to keep turning the lights on, calmly, methodically, and without flinching. Now that we've established the contract as the modern razor blade, the next question becomes unavoidable. How do these corporate empires actually take control? Because if you thought the Shelby family was aggressive in expanding their turf, wait until you see the cold efficiency of hostile takeovers, predatory pricing, and engineered monopolies. The tactics are the same, only the setting has changed. And in the next chapter, we step into the world of market domination, where the goal isn't to win, it's to make sure no one else is left standing. Now pay close attention to this, because what we're about to uncover changes the way you understand the entire system you're living inside. To truly grasp how the modern world works, we have to move past surface-level politics and look straight into the cold logic of how money actually flows. We're taught almost from childhood that capitalism is built on competition, that the best product wins, prices fall, and everyone benefits. It's a comforting story. It gives us the illusion of control. But here's the reality they never teach you. At the highest levels of power, competition is not a virtue, it's a failure. If you're competing, it means you haven't eliminated the threat yet. Now hold that thought, because this is where everything connects. Whether it's the blood-soaked streets of post-war Birmingham or the glass towers of modern finance, the objective is identical: remove every obstacle between you and the flow of money. Thomas Shelby understood this instinctively. He didn't want to be one bookmaker among many. He wanted the roots, the licenses, the police, the silence of rivals who no longer existed. Because the real money was never in the work itself, it was in owning the territory. And if you own the territory, you own everyone trapped inside it. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, and stay with me because this matters. That same logic governs today's financial architecture. When a global bank lobbies for regulations so complex that no small fintech can survive them, that isn't bureaucracy. That's a siege, a market siege. It's the modern equivalent of burning down a rival's warehouse, except now it's done with legal language and 1,000-page bills. No guns, no blood. Just footnotes and compliance costs that quietly strangle competition before it ever takes its first breath. This is how monopolies are built in the 21st century. Not through force, but through fine print. Now pause for a second and really think about this, because the implications are massive. When a handful of institutions control the flow of capital, they become the gatekeepers of reality itself. They decide which industries live, which ideas die, and which futures are even allowed to exist. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about power. The transformation of our economy into a network of invisible toll booths is one of the most important shifts of our time. Every hidden fee, every unexplained rate change, every policy adjustment you never voted for, that's a protection tax. Quiet, legal, relentless. And here's the part most people miss. The mindset behind this system isn't accidental. It's cold, unsentimental, dominant. The same mindset that allowed the Shelbys to evolve from a street gang into a political force. In the boardroom, it's masked with words like synergy, vertical integration, and strategic consolidation. But strip away the language and the pulse is the same. Control the game so the house always wins. No matter who loses, the outcome is guaranteed. Now listen carefully, because this is where the pattern becomes undeniable. The media rarely explains this world honestly, because the people funding the camas often sit at the same tables as the people pulling the strings. But when you study financial history, the parallels scream at you. What we're witnessing is a globalized turf war, only now the weapons are derivatives, debt, and legislation. Trillions instead of street corners, laws instead of blades. This journey we're on is about peeling back the layers of what I call the architecture of corruption, and seeing the machine for what it really is. The white-collar world isn't separate from organized crime. It's the most successful version of it. The legalized one. And once you see that, everything changes. The news looks different. The market looks different. Even your personal financial decisions start to feel heavier, because you realize the field was never neutral. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the business model. The elite don't want a fair fight. They want a guaranteed outcome. And to guarantee it, they make sure they're the only ones left standing when the dust settles. So lock this sentence into your mind. Write it down if you have to. Power plays no fair. Because next, we're going even deeper. And that's where you'll see the most disturbing shift of all. The moment the bribe stops being a suitcase of cash and becomes a seat on the board of directors. Now slow down for a moment, because this is where the story stops being abstract and starts to feel personal. When power evolves, it doesn't disappear, it refines itself. On the streets of Peaky Blinders, control came through protection rackets. A threat, a visit, a payment to avoid destruction. Crude, violent, obvious, everyone knew it was a crime. But in the modern financial world, that same logic didn't vanish. It was cleaned up, legalized, and embedded into daily life. Extortion didn't end, it put on a suit. Here's the quiet truth most people sense but struggle to name. Today, the system doesn't need to smash your windows when it can quietly mortgage your future. Think about debt for a second, really think about it. The endless pages of fine print. The interest that barely touches the principal. The feeling of running, but never arriving. This isn't accidental. This is dependency by design. Just like a gang wants a shopkeeper permanently indebted, modern finance wants individuals locked into lifelong repayment cycles, not through threats, but through contracts. Legalized, normalized, invisible. Now pause here, because this is where indignation turns into clarity. Take a regular family, 2 incomes, a modest home, a few credit cards, one unexpected crisis. Suddenly the system tightens, rates shift, fees appear, credit scores fall. No one breaks the law. No one raises their voice. But the outcome is the same as a shakedown. Wealth flows upward. Stress flows downward. Quietly, efficiently. And this brings us to 2008, the moment the mosque slipped. Because when street criminals fail, they pay the price, they lose territory. They go to prison. But when the biggest financial institutions gambled recklessly and lost, something unprecedented happened. The losses were handed to the public. The profits stayed private. This was the ultimate evolution of the protection racket. Governments were told plainly, pay us or the entire system collapses, and they paid. Trillions. Taxpayer money. While the architects of the collapse walked away with bonuses. That wasn't a bailout, that was a hostage negotiation. Sit with that for a second, because this is the emotional core of the injustice. The enforcers no longer carry weapons, they carry spreadsheets. The threat isn't physical violence, it's foreclosure, ruined credit, permanent financial anxiety. A debt-to-income ratio replaces the razor blade. And the suit does something powerful, it creates moral distance. Decisions aren't framed as harm, they're framed as risk management, margin adjustments, shareholder value. But for the people on the receiving end, the result feels exactly the same as being robbed in the dark. This isn't about isolated bad actors. This is the business model. Laws favor lenders. Complexity protects institutions. Products are engineered to confuse, not empower. And when it breaks, when it always breaks, the cost is pushed downward. This is how predators survive in daylight. They don't break the rules, they write them. And here's the shift that changes everything. Once you stop seeing the financial system as a neutral referee, and start seeing it as a competing gang for your time, energy, and future, your perspective hardens. You read contracts differently. You hear marketing differently. You stop asking, is this legal? And start asking, who really wins here? That realization is heavy. But it's also freeing, because awareness is the first step out of dependency. The more we strip away the suit, the clearer it becomes. The boardroom isn't the opposite of the criminal underworld. It's its final form, more efficient, more protected, more dangerous. And if this clicked, if it felt uncomfortably familiar, comment below. The system is the trap. To really understand how power protects itself, you need to grasp one brutal idea. The race is often decided before it even starts. In Peaky Blinders, the Shelby family never trusted luck. Horses didn't just run, outcomes were engineered. A jockey leaned the wrong way. A bookmaker received the warning. A small detail changed everything. The public watched a race. The insiders watched a script being executed. And that same logic didn't disappear with time, it evolved. On Wall Street, the fixed race didn't end. It was renamed. Now pay close attention to this. In theory, a market only works if everyone plays with the same information. That's the promise. But in reality, information is power, and power is never shared equally. Imagine yourself as an average person trying to build something. You read the news, you study, you invest. You think you're making a rational decision. But while you're clicking buy, someone in a private meeting already knows the company will merge, collapse, or receive government protection tomorrow. That person isn't investing. They're collecting a guaranteed win. By the time the news reaches you, the profit is already gone. Let me ask you something directly, and be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever felt like you did everything right and still lost? That feeling isn't stupidity. It's design. In the streets, a fixed race was a crime you could see. And if you were caught, punishment was immediate. But in the financial world, fixing the race wears a badge of intelligence. When executives trade on privileged information, when politicians quietly move money before a decision becomes public, there is rarely a razor blade waiting. There's a bonus, a promotion, a fine so small it feels like a joke. Steal $100 with force and you're a criminal. Steal 100 million with information and you're a genius. And now, this gets even darker. Because today, the race isn't just fixed by people, it's fixed by machines. High-frequency trading firms spend billions to gain milliseconds. Not seconds, milliseconds. Their servers sit closer to the exchange than yours ever could. In that microscopic slice of time, they see your order coming and trade ahead of you. They profit before your transaction even finishes. That's not competition. That's legal front-running. A digital pickpocket operating at the speed of light. Here's the key insight most people miss. This isn't innovation serving society. It's extraction disguised as progress. The public is no longer a participant in the market, it's the liquidity being harvested. The house doesn't gamble, the house feeds. And this does something corrosive to the human mind. It breaks belief. You stop trusting effort. You stop trusting merit. You start feeling like you're running a race where your horse was never meant to win. That quiet resentment you feel? That's not jealousy. That's awareness trying to surface. From smoky backrooms in Birmingham to sterile hedge fund floors filled with glowing screens, the transition was seamless. Different tools. Same objective, remove risk for the elite. Transfer it to everyone else. And when things go wrong, change the rules. Because the rule makers are sitting at the table. This is where the architecture of corruption becomes complete. Because the most powerful advantage isn't money or speed or information. It's untouchability. The moment the law stops being a boundary and becomes a weapon. And that brings us to the next layer, the final disguise, not technology, not money, but image. Comment below, the game is rigged. To bring this journey to its highest point, we have to face the most uncomfortable truth of all. And this is where everything you've seen so far locks into place. We've exposed the tactics, the territory wars, the legalized extortion, the fixed races, the invisible advantages. But now comes the deeper realization. The comparison between the streets of Birmingham and the towers of Wall Street isn't a metaphor anymore. It's a timeline. Crime didn't disappear. It matured. And the suit was the final upgrade. Here's the shift you need to notice. A street gang fights the system. A boardroom elite becomes the system. That's the evolutionary leap. When Thomas Shelby wanted power, he had to break the law. When modern financial elites want power, they rewrite it. This is the final form of dominance. A world where actions stop being called crimes the moment they become profitable enough. Pay attention to this because it explains everything that feels wrong but never quite gets named. Now pause here for a second. Really sit with this thought. When a gang takes over a neighborhood, everyone knows who the villain is. Fear has a face. But when a financial institution captures regulators, influences legislation, and shapes policy, the damage is far greater and almost completely invisible. This is the masterstroke of white-collar power. The battlefield moves from the street to the statute book. The judge becomes a colleague. The suit becomes a passport into a world where consequences no longer apply. And here's where the emotional weight shifts. Throughout history, from colonial corporations to modern hedge funds, the pattern is identical: legitimized extraction. Wealth is pulled from the edges toward the center. Risk is pushed downward. Protection flows upward. The tools change: interest rates, currencies, derivatives, but the instinct remains primal: dominate, control, secure the flow. The boardroom doesn't need violence. It just needs adjustment, a rate hike, a policy tweak, a quiet decision made far from the people who will feel it. This is where many people experience a mental break. The moment the image of the elite fractures, you start to realize that many so-called captains of industry didn't win by brilliance alone. They won by ensuring that when things went wrong, they wouldn't pay. 2008 wasn't a failure of the system. It was proof of how well it works for those at the top. If you're small, you fail. If you're massive, you're rescued. Steal a little and you're punished. Steal enough and you become indispensable. That's not a flaw. That's the peak of the architecture of corruption. So now we arrive at the real question, and this is where the story turns inward. Who is the true villain? The outlaw who breaks the law because the system never offered him a seat at the table? Or the man who already has everything and still bends the law until it breaks everyone else? The Peaky Blinders never pretended to be heroes. They wore their crimes openly. But modern power hides behind words like liquidity, stability, and growth. That branding is the most effective mask ever created, because it convinces millions of people to defend a system that quietly drains them. This is why the phrase "the only difference is the suit" isn't clever. It's a warning. And yet, this is not the end, because awareness changes the balance. The moment you see the suit as armor, not morality, something shifts. You stop being just another participant in a rigged game. You become an observer. And observers are dangerous. Once enough people understand how the rules are written, the illusion starts to crack. But there's still one final layer left to expose. One last mechanism that explains why this system survives outrage, scandals, and even collapse. We're about to pull that mask off next. Type it in the comments. No more masks. We've reached the point where everything converges, and now the message needs to be sharp, not heavy. Because the truth, once seen, doesn't need repetition. It needs clarity. Here it is. The real revelation isn't that crime exists in suits. It's that the most successful criminals don't break the law anymore. They define it. The streets of Birmingham and the towers of Manhattan are no longer opposites. They are stages of the same evolution. Violence didn't disappear. It was refined. It became procedural, sanitized, scaled. A street gang uses fear to control a block. A boardroom uses policy to control a population. One operates in alleys. The other operates through contracts, interest rates, and legislation. The damage, however, is not smaller. It's exponential. White-collar crime doesn't leave bodies on the pavement. It leaves generations trapped in debt, communities hollowed out, futures quietly erased by decisions made over lunch. And this is the pivot most people miss. The suit doesn't represent legitimacy. It represents insulation. Insulation from consequences. Insulation from empathy. Insulation from the reality they create. When trillions are hidden offshore while public services collapse, that isn't clever accounting. It's a protection racket at a civilizational scale. The system is used. The benefits are extracted. The bill is handed to everyone else. Roads, courts, education, stability, all consumed, none repaid. That's not success. That's parasitism with better branding. The true villain, then, isn't a single person. It's a system that rewards extraction and punishes productivity. A culture that romanticizes scale over morality. That teaches us to admire billion-dollar thefts while condemning small ones, as if size transforms ethics. It doesn't. The mechanics are identical. The intent is identical. Only the reach has changed. Once you see that a hostile takeover is just a gang war with lawyers, once you see that elite bailouts paired with public austerity are just shakedowns with better language, the illusion collapses. Organized crime didn't infiltrate the establishment. It became the establishment. And here's the final quiet truth. Their power depends on belief. Belief in legitimacy. Belief in complexity. Belief that the pen is fundamentally different from the blade. The moment enough people connect those dots, the suit stops working as armor. It becomes a uniform. And uniforms lose their power the moment they're recognized. This isn't the end of the story, it's the moment awareness spreads. Because no empire built purely on extraction survives forever. History is clear on that, and the cracks are already visible in the glass. Type it in the comments. The truth is out. We've just crossed a long road together, from the smoke-filled streets of 1920s Birmingham to the silent algorithms running modern financial power. And if this journey cracked something open in the way you see money, control, and the hidden architecture behind the world we live in, then don't let it end here. Subscribe now, not later. Because this channel isn't about comfort, it's about clarity. You're not joining a feed. You're joining a group that refuses to accept polished lies at face value and chooses to look directly at what's underneath. If this story resonated, hit like. That single action pushes these truths past the noise and into the hands of people who are still searching for answers. And if you made it all the way here, leave a comment saying, "I'm still here." That tells me you're part of the few who don't turn away when things get uncomfortable. The story doesn't end now. There's another video on your screen that goes even deeper, closer to the core of the system we've just exposed. Click it. Stay with the momentum. I'll see you there.